Hello, 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 my friends in Monster Land. Tuesday night, once again, at the Untold Radio Network's Real American Monsters, and we are back in the studio. We are back in control, and we are at the helm for the next hour or so. And do we have another great guest for you tonight from the great state of Colorado, Mr. Dennis Pfhol. We're really happy to have him. He actually stepped in huge for us this week and did us a huge favor. Hoyt Velarde was supposed to be our guest, and he ended up getting ill and sick. And Dennis was kind enough to break his schedule and step in for Hoyt tonight. And we couldn't ask for anything better because we have another habituation researcher, investigator in the mist. And you know how much I love that. And you guys all know about my past. So I'm really excited to hear more about that and more about Matilda. I had somebody ask me to say, make sure you mention Matilda. So Mr. Michael, I think he's actually there. Mr. Michael Marsico. He's the one that asked the question. So I have asked it, and now I know who Matilda is. So we're getting ready for a great show tonight. So good evening. Mr. Randy Books is with us. The Squatch father himself, Mr. Alfred Santariga, is in the audience. Good evening, Blue-Eyed Northern. Good evening, Wisp Babs. They are my all-star wrench team. You guys mess around in the chat, they will kick you out. They will tell you bye-bye. Miss Diane Fowler's also part of it, the wrench team. Couldn't ask for a bunch of people. I love them all. And they keep everything running smooth in the chat room while we are live to those people that come in with disrespect and for the guests and myself. So I appreciate all you guys. So everything's good here. I've been back up the top of Rock Throw Alley, and we're starting to get things going again. I would like to say on Sunday that we received 2 calls that to me sounded like the Sasquatch calls that we have heard in the past. And we have a tree up there that is a newfound tree. And there was actually a nipper bottle of whiskey put in it. Now, this tree is off trail in the middle of nowhere at the top of Rock Throw Alley. You guys are all familiar with that. And this little bottle of whiskey was left inside this tree. Of course, people could leave it up there, but what's going on up there and what has gone up there, I've never seen another human in 10 years up there. So keep an eye open for that. We're going to start posting videos here pretty soon. So I guess everybody, Mr. Michael Morgan's here. Everybody's starting to pour in. We got a great guest, and let's get this show on the road. Ladies and gentlemen, from the great state of Colorado, Mr. Dennis. Oh, Dennis just disappeared on me. Well, we have to wait to call. I was ready to bring him out, and now he's going. So, Dennis, if you guys aren't familiar with who Dennis is until he comes back, I'll tell you, he was one of the investigators at the Erickson Project in Kentucky, and there's also the Ohio River Research Location in northern Kentucky, and I guess they had a family of 4 of what Dennis was telling me, and here he comes just back now. Here we go. All right, let's bring him out once again, and I'll let him tell you a little bit about himself. All right, here he is, Mr. Dennis Pfhol.
Hi, Chris. Can you hear me okay now?
I can hear you good now. We're all straight. I was ready to put you on the stage, and then you disappeared. I'm like, oh boy.
I don't know what happened. We had a lot of lightning storms through here a few minutes ago, so it just dumped me all of a sudden. Anyways,
I just want to say thank you so much for stepping in tonight and being our guest tonight, and I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy man, and taking the time is very valuable these days to a lot of people and to everybody, actually. And I just want to say it's much appreciated.
Well, yeah, you're more than welcome. I love to be here. I love to talk about it when I can. It's been a while since I have, but yeah, it's, this subject never bores me. It's always fascinating to hear, the things that are going on out there. And I think in the last few years, I've really noticed quite a few really fascinating and interesting accounts and eyewitness accounts and stories and things that's happened with people, and it seems more and more this mystery is really moving forward, and people are really starting to open their eyes. The general public and everything seems to be a lot more aware of it. So that's always exciting and fun. So, but yeah, but I'm glad to be here, and I'm sorry that Hoyt couldn't make it. What a great guest he would have been, and I'm sure he will be in the future for you guys. So
Yeah, we're looking forward. We actually have a recording that Dennis got from Hoyt's property. We're going to play later on in the show. So before we get
yeah.
started, Dennis, why don't you just give everybody just a small little bio of you and tell everybody how you got interested in the Sasquatch topic.
Well, like many people, we weren't really, I heard of it growing up. Actually, grew up in Northern California when I was young, and right after the Patterson-Gimlin thing happened, I remember as a very young kid that kind of being all the rave, but we didn't put a whole lot of attention to it, and then I moved to Colorado in the late 80s and been here, met my wife, been married here. I've been in the state for, 38 years plus. And when I was raising our family when we were younger, we did a lot of camping, a lot of outdoor stuff, just like every typical, outdoors person does. And never really had any thoughts about it. Of course, being in the mountains, you think, well, if Bigfoot exists, it's something on the West Coast, California, Washington, Oregon, but never would have thought Colorado. And then one year, this would have been in mid 99, 2000, things changed for us. And we were going into this area. We liked a 4-wheel drive Jeep up in the high Rockies by Leadville. And I had something really strange happen one night. And I thought it was a bear. But it was a bear that acted like a man that came into our camp after we all settled down to go to sleep. And it troubled me greatly because I was used to wild animals. And this thing was like a wild animal moving around pitch black with no effort, at all. Like it could see perfectly in pitch black. But it was acting like a person, like a human would be, like spinning pedals on a bicycle and one of my kids' bicycles and toying around with things around the camp. And but just to make a long story short, it freaked me out. And I didn't know what to make of it. I just thought something's just not right. We're in a remote area of the mountains. And it bothered me a lot. Well, I think it was later that year we were jeeping up above tree line up near some old mines, and there's this big old lake up there, and we was looking for a place to fish around it. And as I was walking around the lake midday, found this huge human-like footprint right there off the shore of the lake. And it was sunken in some tundra, kind of like grassy tundra. And it was fresh as day. And I know I'm familiar with tracking and stuff, and I could tell that whatever had left had just been there minutes before we got there. We're in a remote spot. There had been no other people there, right? We kind of found this little lake back in the backcountry. And so I looked towards the shore and I could see something was in the water there too. So I thought, well, what's going on? So again, to abbreviate it, because we don't have a lot of time, we went back the next week and I cast it. And I still have that cast today, but it's 5 toes, looks like a human footprint, except very big and heavy. It's 15.5 inches long by about, I think, nearly 6 inches at the widest point. And you could almost see what later was described as a mid-tarsal break towards the center of the foot to the back of the heel. And everything that Dr. Jeff Meldrum had ever described about these prints, it was all there. So that really opened my eyes to the whole subject because in conjunction of what happened to us earlier that year in that same area, I started thinking, well, these things might be real, and they actually are here in Colorado as well. So that got us involved, and my wife and I started really doing a lot of research ourselves and looking into reports and sightings in Colorado. Spent a lot of time in the areas, had a lot more interesting accounts and things that happened during that time. Never really saw one, we just had a lot of experiences that were, typical sounds, vocalizations, various things that people tend to see these days. And then I got involved with the BFRO in 2000, or it would have been in 2004, late late in the year, we went to our first expedition with the BFRO and Matt Moneymaker to New Mexico. And really great experience there. We really got to meet a lot of the local natives there at the Mescalero Reservation, and they hosted us and had some phenomenal stuff happening while we were there at the expedition in December of 2004. And it just kind of took off from them. I became a member of the BFRO then and started doing research through the BFRO through the state of Colorado. And then I got involved in the summer of 2005 with what is known now as the Kentucky Bigfoot situation, or the BFR. Well, some people know it as the Adrian Erickson Project or the Ohio River Valley Project. And that involved a small family group of Bigfoot that I don't like to use the word habituated. I tend to habituation kind of is a pretty strong word to the situation. I kind of refer it to more of a repeat visitation, where there was a small family group of these creatures that would not regularly, but often enough come into some property there, private property, in the hollows of north central Kentucky. And this family was a rural family, a poor family living in the backwoods there. And of course, if you've ever been in rural Kentucky, you can see how heavily wooded that is there. And once you're there and you experience it, you would say, yeah, I could definitely see that making sense here. But anyways, this family group, or this younger one, seemed to be attached to a woman who grew up there. And at that time, that woman was in her mid-30s when I got involved with the project. And she said that from around the age of 5 years old, she used to put food out with her mother for these things in the backyard. And her mother used to refer to them as homeless people, or an aunt or an uncle who lived a hermit life in the woods in the dark. But she said, Dennis, one of them stood next to what they used to have a portable outhouse in the back at the edge of the wood line behind the house. And she said its head was near the top of this portable outhouse, which was about 8 foot high. And she said, there's no way that could have been anybody I knew. So anyways, we got involved with that project, and the intent there was to try to do long-term research on private land and try to keep it hush-hush, which was not possible to do. That compromised a lot of things down the road and severely affected the research itself, unfortunately. But from the very beginning of that project, my first day there, I actually had a sighting myself. It was remarkable. We used thermal imaging. We had an old Raytheon 250D thermal camera in 2005. That was kind of the go-to thing there. It was still a very expensive camera. Nowadays, you got tons of different makers, and they're more affordable. But this was an old black and white Raytheon 250D. We actually had a sighting through that thermal. We weren't able to record because, if you know, a thermal Raytheon doesn't have the technology built into the camera to actually record. You have to have exterior devices and a setup, but we weren't prepared. And I saw this thing. So did Adrian. He was there as well. And then the woman who we were dealing with, her husband, also saw it. So I was blown away. I was like, wow, this is incredible. You know, we've got stuff going on here that's legit. And I have to emphasize, it wasn't just us. It was the neighbors next door. It was some people in the area. It was the other people in the family that she was related to that had experiences. And there was other BFRO people who I believe are still part of the BFRO, but they're pretty well-known names within the BFRO, who had visited that location prior to my first time there, which would have been in, I believe, the end of August of 2005. They had been in there in June and July. And these guys had their own sightings and experience that blew them out of the water too. They actually had Class A's, which we call a Class A as an actual physical sighting with your own eyes of one of these creatures. And So it was remarkable. It was a hot spot. And so, again, the intent was to get in there and set up a long-term research that we could bring in a scientist, which we did get out of the BFRO, a young lady that was I want to say Stanford grad, pretty good accredited scientist. And we put her on the property, and the intent was for her to try to experience as much as she could of these creatures if they were to come in regularly. And again, I want to emphasize, regularly means that if you see them once a week, you're lucky. I'm not saying you're going to come in at 6 p.m. every night, right? Or right at the sun goes down. No, that didn't happen. They would come in at all kinds of hours. And it was mostly at night, but sometimes during the day, especially in bad weather. Sometimes you wouldn't think you'd see them, but rainy days and snowy days, they'd show up out of the blue. It's an interesting thing that, I'd share later down the road, a theory there, but less people outdoors. I think that they're out, but anyways, so she was set up there, and we supplied her and the people we were working with, the lady that started this thing. We gave them camcorders, night vision devices. What do they call it? PMD. What are they? Anyways, there were night vision devices. They were the type the military use. So this wasn't cheap equipment. We had the thermal, we had audio gear, and we deployed those around the property in attempts to try to get, some evidence of these creatures. And she was able to get some audio recordings, some interesting stuff. But in the long run, what we ended up really doing, the most effective way to gather any kind of audio, or primarily video, was through the woman who this originated with, because we think that basically this family group was there because she had a legacy with her mother putting food out for them, and they trusted her. And so when she would go out, oftentimes in the evening before it gets dark, she would take something out to these creatures to the edge of the tree line. Now, she didn't know that they were there every night. Again, they were not. But she felt it was her duty to carry this plate of food, whatever it be, sometimes peanut butter sandwiches, sometimes McDonald's pancakes. She would carry them to the edge of the tree line and set them down near the edge of the tree line, and then stand there and call to them and say, "I've got your food," and she does her thing. And a lot of times she'd leave it, and you come back in the morning, it's still there. But there was, again, once every second or third, fourth time, it was gone. They would take it. And she would say herself, she would see them standing down in the shadows, watching her and waiting for her to walk away and leave the food. So it was an interesting situation. And, we got to experience that ourselves during the time we were there to a limited degree. I heard them. I've seen them. Being involved in the project, I myself had seen them, I want to say about 6 times myself with my unaided eyes, and through some, night vision devices as well as camcorders. So, it was, I'll tell you, it changes your whole perspective of the world. These things aren't supposed to exist, yet there they are. And they're amazing. They're highly intelligent. They are not a big dumb ape. I often felt like when I was dealing with them, I was dealing with human beings, capable, higher thought beings. These aren't just a dumb creature. These things are very premeditated, thoughtful personalities. They had differing personalities, and I can only tell you this, the way they reacted and they acted while we were there. You could kind of tell, which one you were dealing with. Now, having said that, initially, the start of this project, there was a small one that seemed to be attached to the woman who was involved that got us there. And this one seemed to be a juvenile. And the reason we say that is because one of the video pieces that was obtained early and during the project by her husband, we were able to go down. We knew where he shot the piece of footage. We knew what camera he had, and we were able to go down and recreate that same area, and very close to that time. So the foliage and the trees and the branches and everything were very much the same as it was shot. I think it was a week or two before. So using that data and that knowledge, we were able to go down, knew where the camera was set, and recreate that, the figure that passed through the trees. And then, of course, you gauge the height of the branches and the leaves, and you match them, and that's how you can get size. And this particular subject, we got the first one, I said the juvenile, we calculated to be a little under 5 foot tall. So that's why we call that a juvenile. And in that footage that's associated with it, there is a short piece of footage associated with it where it's moving through the trees, and you see its whole entire left side, and you can see it kind of powering through the trees, and you can see an arm come up like this and move down. That one isn't very big, but that is the one that we believe was attracted to the woman the most, because it would be the one that showed itself the most often, almost like it was reckless and, not so cautious like the other ones. So let me clarify. In this family group, we believe there was a total of, we believe there was 4, but we're not 100% sure. What we do know was there was this younger one, the juvenile, a little under 5 foot tall. Then we know we had seen and been around 2 others. One was around 6 foot, a little over 6 foot tall, and the other one was a little shorter than that one. So, whatever that, I can't give you an exact height, but we do know one was around 6 foot or a little over. And then there was a 4th one, and we called him Big Daddy because he wasn't seen often at all. I think only several times, and that was witnessed by her husband, the woman's husband, and it scared the living bejesus out of him both times he had the experience with it. It was aggressive. It was not very friendly or happy with the situation of the juvenile approaching or being close to the woman that was involved with the project. And it would let everyone know it wasn't happy. I can go into stories about that, but we don't have the time right now.
All right, Dennis, before we go too far, let's backtrack a little bit here. When you first had your first experience in Colorado, when you guys were camping with your family and everything, did you ever think that it would turn into what it did afterwards? Did you ever expect those first prints or anything just to blossom the way it did and grab you and take you?
Not at all. Nope. World's a strange place, buddy. And, when you start thinking about stuff like that, you think, well, what else did we hear growing up that was just myths that could actually be real? Loch Ness, UFOs, ETs, dogmen. I've not had experiences with those things, but what I've seen and what I've experienced, I don't ever doubt that in my life. You just can't look at life the same way. So
right. What captured you? What was the next step? You had that first interaction, you found the footsteps. What was the next? And was New Mexico the next step? Was that what you go?
New Mexico was the next step. I spent some time on the reservation, made a couple of pretty good friends there. They invited me back. I did some research there by myself. Aside from the BFRO group, I was still with the BFRO, but I was going there individually, and for several months after the first time there. And I spent some time on the reservation, and I'll tell you, I believe reservations, and I know a lot of people have said this, but I definitely believe reservations are a magnet for these creatures. And for whatever reason, they're closer to them because the Native Americans respect the land, and they have a kinship with them that most of modern Americans cannot understand or share. And, that goes through their respect for them. They hear things, they see things, and they leave them be. They walk away, leave them be. One of them told me one time, they say, their ways are not our ways. but they are not animals. These are our cousins. These are our brothers. These are humans too. And ever since I heard that, coupled with my experiences, I absolutely agree.
Do you think that it's because that the natives treat them like normal? They're just normal. They're just part of the reservation, that they live there and that's what they are. You think that that's the case? And do you think that that expands to other areas like a habituation area or like a family unit? Do you think because they're feeding them, and do you think that because they're showing them respect, and do you think that's part of why these people can get so close to the Sasquatch?
Absolutely. It's a form of trust. And with the Native Americans, I think it's just a natural thing. It's live and let live, you know. And you know, you get to know any Native Americans. I think this is across all reservations that acknowledge them, which pretty much I think is all of them. They all know they're there. They just say, we don't talk about it much. I actually was told this is we don't talk about it to white men much because they don't believe us. So why waste our time? But, you know, a lot of us do. And then when it comes to habituations or repeat visitations like that, it is a hard-earned relationship of trust. And I don't think it comes easy for anybody. It takes a long time to gain that. And let me tell you, from my experience, at least with those situations, you think it's a drop in the bucket if you can put food out and a Sasquatch will come and take it. No, they won't. They'll never come in from the same direction twice. They'll never come in the same time twice. They are so unpredictable and deliberately that way, you know, and you never know if they're going to take anything you put out. So I think that situation or that trust has to be gained. But even then, that trust is always going to be a standoffish type of trust, that they're never going to fully trust you because, you know, in our situation here, that woman has spent 30 years plus of her life interacting with them, even to a limited degree. And they trusted her. They almost seemed to be happy when she came out. But they, even with those emotions and that trust, they were still extremely cautious and wary and careful. So there's a reason why there's still a mystery, and there's a reason why they're still hard to nail down. So.
Right, that's great you brought up because at Larry's at my area, we figured that out too. We were we did things always the same. We were always repetitive, but they were never. They would never do the same thing. They would never come, like you said, they would never come in the same direction. But we did it that way because they knew where we were going. They knew where we were going to be, and we didn't pull any surprises on them, and that brought us closer. So that's what it sounds like. The same, you know, when you hear all the different stories of these people with them on their property and how they, you know, they're interacting, like you don't like to call it habituation, but the only word that comes to my mind right off the tip of my tongue. But it's a trust that you build with them, and over the year, it takes a long time. It just doesn't, like you said, it doesn't happen in the snap of your fingers. You have to build this trust, and that woman, over 30 years, built that trust, and that's why they were happy to see her, because they knew they weren't going to hurt her. They weren't going to hurt them. They knew whatever she was bringing them doesn't hurt them, and that's the trust. How important do you think the trust factor is in getting close and being able to, you know, investigate or research the Sasquatch?
Oh yeah, it's everything. You know, 30 years of building that trust, they were still careful and cautious. And I think it was the recklessness of the juveniles, you know, what do you want to use the word? Naivety. It kind of assumed she was, you know, it was going to be okay to show itself and to approach. And it was cute in a way, but at the same time, you know, you have to be, you nailed it earlier. And I try to say this to everybody. And this is how I conduct when I go on expeditions myself here in Colorado. I try to conduct it where you have to make yourself predictable. Do not do crazy, stupid things. Be very predictable. Especially in a habituation like you're doing, that's the key. That's the recipe, because you know, that's one of the doors that you will open in helping to gain that trust and advance it forward. So It's very important. We have to show, sincerity when we're trying to interact with them, that we're not there to hurt them, and that, we're very predictable in everything we do. So, it's very important that, we exercise that when we're trying to do something. I don't care where you're at. If you're in the woods and you think there's Squatch around there, don't do stupid, crazy, quick movements. Just be predictable and easy and relaxed, and you may experience something.
Don't throw stones. Let them throw stones at you, but don't throw stones back. I don't understand why you would do that, but
and don't show fear. I mean, fear. I mean, that's one of the things that I think part of throwing stones not only is to show their displeasure with people in an area, which could be, but I think it also gauges. It's for them to gauge your reaction. If you're a fearful, scary, unpredictable kind of person that's gonna do unpredictable things, they're gonna know to stay well away. But if you don't show any fear and you kind of acknowledge, and I think that can do wonders. I mean, it's worked for us. So
you're living in Colorado. This is going on in Kentucky. You must have one hell of a support system for you to be able to go to Kentucky for periods of time like that and leave home. And did your wife come with you too, or was she part of the project, or how did that all work?
Well, she came with me when she could. She works full time herself, and I, at the time, had a small business. And when I got involved and folded into the process with Adrian needed someone there to work, to manage it kind of full time, because we brought in a scientist, as I said earlier. We put her in a home right there on the property. The people who this originated with moved to a different house, but with a lot of property around them, and it was only 5 miles away. Well, eventually, if you know this part of Kentucky, this is a bunch of hollows. It's rural. And the hollows are like, I always like to describe them like opposite of hills, right? They go down into the ground, not up. And these hollows are covered in thick, dense foliage and woods, and briars, and nasty stuff. So people don't typically go into those hollows, especially in the summer. It gets really thick. And so there's a network, corridors of traveling areas all over that valley, that Ohio River Valley, northern Kentucky, and other places in Kentucky too. But I think that's one of the things that help these things to move around easily and never be detected by people. But what would happen is that they could come up out of the hollow into someone's backyard, and people would never know at midnight. They come in, and unless they had a dog there or something, they could walk right up to the back porch. And they often did around here. They did strange things that you can't explain. They pick up stuff and move stuff and carry stuff down and away, and they get into cat food and dog food that's left out. They were kind of mischievous that way. But that area, again, you wouldn't think, but if you're there, you definitely say, yeah, I can definitely see this happening. So my job was to basically help manage this. And the people we were dealing with, again, at the beginning, when I said we had some influences outside of the project that got involved against our wishes, our will. These people had heard about it early on, and I guess they had contacted the woman's husband and told them all this stuff. And when it comes to Bigfoot research, what's the biggest problem, especially with people who aren't familiar with the subject? They hear that this is a phenomena that could blow wide open and you'd be famous, right? Everybody would want to talk to you. You'd be on the newspapers, you'd be on TV. And of course, you'd be rich, right? People will throw money at you. Well, there were some people outside of the organization that were telling these people all these lies, and it muddied up the waters pretty bad. So there was things we couldn't control, and we had to struggle through that. And part of my job was trying to keep, everything moving along and keep the research positive, keep the equipment coming that we needed, and utilizing it out in the field, which was one of my big parts of the job, was to be out in the field with the husband and the lady trying to gather evidence. And I spent a lot of time out there doing that. but there was outside influences that were trying to steal them away. And they had written contracts with Adrian, agreed to work with him, and Adrian would compensate him fairly for anything we got. But people were coming in and saying, no, he's ripping you off, and, you know, all this bull, you know, and lies and stuff, and basically making it extremely hard to do anything with them. And so there was a level of doubt and distrust kind of, you know, stirred up within the people we're trying to work with, because they were being pulled in all these different directions. And so it made it extremely tough to try to get anything productive moving along. So anyways, you know, we relied on our scientist that was there, and she did a lot of work around there. She processed anything we collected. We collected hair samples. We collected some tracks, not many, but we did get a few very interesting tracks from the area. Cast those, got a collection of them. And I cast a really nice set in snow. I found a whole trackway one winter. It was incredible. It came out of the wood line, went towards a plate of food that was set out hours earlier, and then it arced back into this tree line. It was 200 yards long and about 3 inches of snow, fresh fallen snow. And this trackway was a perfect, I mean, everything you've seen and heard of Sasquatch tracks. And I found some here in Colorado. This thing lined up perfectly, linear track pattern, toe and heel, 4 to 5 foot long strides, flexation between each foot strike. It was incredible. And I tried to film it, and I actually did cast, I think, 3 of those out of that trackway in the snow. We utilized some wax and some forensic stuff the police department used, but we were successful in gathering some tracks. And they, I believe, turned out to be 17 inches long by 6 or 7 inches wide at the ball of the foot. So they're significantly big tracks. Amazing. That's one of many things. We got audio, and of course, in total, and I say this, people will think, oh, wow, that's crazy. 42 pieces of individual footage. A lot of them are very short. A lot of them are out of focus, not perfectly framed, problematic. In 2005, we were working with Sony HD cameras. We went from HDR tape cameras, what's they call the mini DV cameras, to digital camcorders. So Adrian, who funded the project, spent the money, and we outfitted them with camcorders that were digital with hard drives, high definition. I think at the time was 1024, right? 4K weren't quite available yet, but we've outfitted them with those, coupled with PMD or PVS 14s. That's the military style night vision devices. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, with the Raytheon 250D camera. And we use those camcorders with the night vision devices mostly during the night. And we were able to capture a few interesting pieces of footage, one walking through the trees early on. There was a facial footage initially caught. Now, that was before I came into the project. That would have been in early August, I think, 2005. And that was done with a regular camcorder. And people often see that. Now, you asked earlier about Matilda, the name Matilda. Mm-hmm. You see, there's a piece of footage out there that shows a profile of a face, you know, the head, and it's kind of looking this direction. And it kind of looks back. It's out there. I know it's been released on the interweb. That was one of the earliest pieces that the woman took. There's a whole story behind that. Interesting how she got it. But that one is the reason that she's called Matilda or Maddie is because my wife and the woman involved, I think my daughter and several other the ladies that were involved in the project were looking at it one day, and they said, you know, look at all that matted hair on her. They said, let's call her Maddie. So that's where they come up with the name Matilda. So, Yeah, but that was one of the first pieces of footage. But again, I wasn't involved in the project till after that was procured. But the first time I saw that, I was blown away. And I can tell you that I did see that same profile and head and the figure myself several times in various situations while I was out there. So, and I think that one there is actually one of the larger ones, the ones I was mentioning earlier about being around 6 foot. Because the juvenile one is.
Go ahead. Sorry. No, go ahead.
Mhm. No, I'm done.
No,
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask you a quick question before, and then I'll let you get to the little ones, because we had a little one in our place too. Were they vocal? I mean, you got audio and stuff, but were they like howling vocals, or were they very just like whoop over here, little break or little knock, something like that, or were they howling all the time? Because at my area, they weren't very vocal. You would catch them once in a while, but nothing. How about there?
Very good question. Very good question. I don't actually touch that subject too much. It's, something I had noted, but no, not at all. Not like other places here in the West where I live. We go into research areas. Of course, these are vast areas. You can get howls and responses and wood knocks out there. I think it was due to the fact that we're in a rural area. There's homes, homesteads, and they're scattered around. It's not a thriving metropolis, don't get me wrong, but there's homes scattered around. But I think because of that, the one thing I noted is the lack of any, loud vocalizations ever during that. There was several sounds that they would make that we'd know they're around, but we never heard like long howls. We never experienced wood knocks until we actually conducted one experience once. We knew they were down in the woods near the property, and we had been kind of having ongoing back and forths with them. And we decided just out of the blue to try a few wood knocks. And that elicited a wood knock or two back, along with the most incredible scream I've ever heard. And I had my audio gear going, and I'll be dang, Chris, to this day, I lost that audio record. I don't know how it happened, but it didn't record on my device. When everything else recorded fine, that one I went to replay back, and the SD card I was using corrupted. How often does that happen?
It could have been the frequency that hit too. The frequency is a thing as of late, and they could have. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but okay, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it happened, and it doesn't happen that often. But my God, I was so disappointed because it was that scream that sounded like, "Hey, we're down here, quit messing with us," or whatever. But it sounded like the woman, the crazy screaming woman being murdered in the woods. It was incredible, and I lost that one, but I did get a lot of others. Mainly what they would do around there, Chris, to answer your question, would be branch breaking. When they come into the area, they'd be gone for a week, 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks in the winter. We wouldn't see or hear from them. And then one day, suddenly, she would come in the house after coming home from work in the evening, and she said, "I think I heard one." What they would do if they saw her car pull in, or we were around there, they would snap a branch down in the trees. Okay, loud snap, pop, right? Mm-hmm. Or the other thing, and I'll try to recreate this. I'm pretty good at it because I've heard it so much, but it was a low grunt, and it basically just sounded like this. It was like a, just like that. You'd hear it come from the tree lines down there. And I heard that sound more than anything else with the snapping in the wood, but never any blatant screams, howls, wood knocks, only the wood knock when we did it first ourselves. So I think part of it is, and maybe in your situation as well, is they don't need to be vocal. Maybe they don't want to give themselves away for whatever reasons. They don't need to communicate that far out. So I don't know. What's your theory on that?
Well, I agree 100%. You did in the winter once a month, if that. Sometimes they wouldn't come for a whole month, but you knew when they were there because they would snap at you. That's how we knew when they were close. But my guys, they like to throw rocks. They like to throw stones at you, but never hit you, but to let you know. And then they like to knock when they're in back heat, because we did a pattern hike. did the same hike all the time. Never veered from it. That way we would notice if there was a rock left or a feather left or something left for us along the trail. And there was a down tree, and sometimes a branch would be on the left-hand side or on the right-hand side. One time was balanced on top of this down tree. They must have been right there, because how does the tree stay balanced on top of
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But,
Interesting. Yeah. We had similar stuff, I'd have to say. Not so much with the balancing branches, but we'd occasionally get rocks thrown at us when we're just sitting back patio and they come around. And you know what we took it as, Chris? We were like, you almost sense the communication is like, hey, get off your butts, go in the house, make us something and bring it out.
Yeah. Well, you learned what they liked. You learned what they liked to eat, what they didn't like. They would never eat hot dogs. They would never, ever touch a hot dog, ever.
I don't blame them.
I mean, so that's another. And then at the end, Dennis, I don't want to this is your interview, but by the end, we were taking a Tupperware bowl and putting everything in the Tupperware bowl and burying it in the ground and putting stones and dirt and rocks over it. And we would come up, and everything would be off the top, the rocks, the stones, the Tupperware lid would be popped. Everything would be gone. They never left anything. They always took it. They took the peanut butter jars.
Wow.
We never found peanut butter jars. Apples. They took whole bags. We stopped piercing them in the trees. We were piercing them in the trees because it would take them to notice it was the hands. And we would just finally, at the end, we were just putting them in the bag because they were taking the whole bag with them.
Wow. Did you say that would they leave stuff in exchange for that stuff often enough or at all? Or
feathers and stones. They would play a game with this quartz crystal that we had. They would take it, bring it back. We had a monkey in the tree that had Velcro hands on it, and we would strap it up in the tree like 14 feet, right on a branch. It'd be 14 feet up, and its arms would be around the branch, tied. And then it would be on the ground the next time we would come up, and the arms would still be tied. So whatever did it had to lift that thing up over the branch and put it down on the ground.
Yeah, had to have opposable thumbs to do it.
Yeah. That's what we tried to do. We wanted to prove that whatever was there had to have hands. We would put stones on top of the peanut butter jar, right? On that right on the rock, and then the peanut butter jar would be gone, and the stone would be left directly underneath where the peanut butter jar was. And then you know that wasn't an animal that was doing that.
Yeah.
So
right. Well, what we ended up. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna. How did you figure out that there was a family unit there? That's the next question I got for
you. Mainly because the different subjects we dealt with. I had a visual on, like I said, 6 different times, and we knew we had recorded the younger one, and then that was around 6 foot tall. I saw one night pulling into the driveway. We were going to go out and do what we call our night ops with a husband. And I had pulled into, they had a long drive that kind of snaked back behind homes and onto this property, was surrounded by tobacco fields and dense, woods. And there was one light, a lamp, sodium vapor lamp on a light pole in their parking area near their garage by the house. Everything else beyond that was woods and dark. And as I turned in there that night with all my gear sitting next to me in my car, I had night vision, audio gear, everything sitting there, cameras. And I turned into that driveway and I turned the headlights off the car and I look a quarter mile down and I see who I thought was the husband standing by that light. But quickly I realized that it's standing in the shadow of the light. So the beam is casting a shadow and it's going down this hill and down the hollow on the grass and in the weeds and down into the hollow, into the darkness of the hollow. And this thing's standing right in that shadow, but it was silhouetted with the light around it. And it was almost his height. He was a tall guy. He was 6'2" or 3", skinny guy. And this thing was almost his height, but within seconds, I realized it wasn't him. And I saw its head turn towards me because what struck me right away was the head size. The head was much bigger than a person's. It's fluffy and they're not. So the ones in Kentucky aren't conical like everyone says. Patterson Gimlin has got a conical, a head, cone shape to the head, but these were more rounded. They were they were round and kind of big, just kind of fat and round. And I don't know if the hair made it look that odd. It was just had an odd shape to it. But I could see the head was definitely not a person. And the first thing that really impressed me was it turned towards the light, or towards my car, as it realized I was coming down the driveway, because it was totally frozen, like standing still. Like, I guess it was hoping I was going by or something. But then I think it realized I was coming towards it down the driveway, and I saw its head just cock towards me a little bit. And then the first thing it did was this left arm came up like this, and its wrist went down like this, and it pumped, and it took a step forward. Something I can tell you other people describe seeing, but I've seen it time and again, the initiation of a stride or a walk. They tend to pump with their arms. It was like someone trying to swim through the air, right? And it pumped. And when it did that, Chris, the arm was huge. I can't describe it. The arm was disproportionate to the rest of it. And where it bent, where the knuckle and the hand was, it was just enormous. And I knew then I wasn't looking at a person. And I feel like I had caught it out in the open. It was kind of out there doing something. It was waiting for the car to go by, but instead it turned on the drive. And then it just kind of went into a casual stride and disappeared behind their parking garage right there. It all happened within seconds. And I was like, holy crud, what just happened? I looked down and there's my camera. Everything is next to me. And there's no way I would have got it. If I would have had the camera on and running when I turned down that driveway, which I had no reason to. We usually never had anything like that happen. You know, we have to go out in the fields and go in the back to have any experiences. And I didn't expect to catch it there in the open, but I did. To this day, I'm like, dang it. It would have been incredible footage if I'd had that stuff there. But that kind of stuff happened actually quite frequently, where you're not prepared and you try to be all the times. You're carrying your gear, but you just can't. It's the unpredictability of the research is part of the hill to climb trying to do it. But so that was one of the ones that I say why I believe there was 4, because we also have a piece of footage with 2 of them crossing a field, a tobacco field, using the PVS-14 night vision device. And they're following each other. They're walking in a single file along the tree line. It's 10 or 11 at night, but they're walking, and it's quite a distance, not close. It's a distance away, but they're walking. One's following the other one, and you can see the one in front's a little taller than the one behind it, but they're almost similar in size. And I say they're females, and the only reason I say that is not because we could see like patty breasts, but because the body shape on those 3 individuals, the young one and these 2 others, were very pear-shaped, like a woman. It's like the hips kind of really came out fairly wide. And the shoulders were narrower. You know, they weren't like everyone describes a male Sasquatch, linebacker shoulders. They were, more adequate to the body, but just heavy, wide body and hips, So that's why we say female. We assume that. So
do you think that the juveniles are allowed more to come and mess with you more frequently than the adults? Do you think that's the case?
I think in this family group, I think they had the family group itself probably is intergenerational, with the mother putting food out for who knows how many years in that area before the woman herself got involved as a child. And I think maybe that family group felt comfortable enough with with her particularly, but they tended to show a certain level of comfort with her husband, even though the husband and her, they were only married a few years before this whole thing happened. So he was fairly new to the scene. And then, of course, when I showed up, I was there regularly. I would go usually 2 weeks there and 2 weeks home, or 2.5 weeks and a few weeks home, and back and forth all the time, flying or driving to Kentucky. And over time, they became, I think, more accustomed to me being there, because I would go out with her often. And that was the intent, for them to get used to me and then our local scientist as well. But she didn't have as much success. She didn't get along well with the couple. They were pretty rough on her, so she didn't get along well, and so she didn't spend much time with them. But I did. As the project manager, I had to be there all the time. I had to make sure they had the equipment, they had cameras, they had recording gear, and negotiation issues, you know. So over time, I feel like they became comfortable with my presence because I was with her and I didn't present any threat. And I had a few experiences where I was there myself, and I had one yelling at me from the trees back in there that, and I could tell, I mean, it wasn't a yell like a person, but it was an agitated, all right, you've been out here trying to, you know, looking at me long enough, get out of here, go back home. That kind of message was sent to me in gibberish or whatever they use. And speaking of that, yeah, we've heard some sort of language gibberish thing that it's unintelligible, but it's as described what you've heard other people say, but not often, you know, but we've heard that there. Mostly it's the grunts and the branch breaking. It's more subtle stuff, you know. So
were there folks trying to break into the property, trying to get in on the parade, you know, trying to get a piece? Did you have to chase people out of there? Or
the biggest problem right off the bat, there was a group out of Yellowknife, Canada, that was the ones that was really muddying it up, claiming that what the couple was experiencing was worth millions of dollars and they could be millionaires. Don't work with Adrian, blah, blah, blah. So that created a whole bunch of problems because the guy himself, he wasn't so excited about the Bigfoot subject. Her husband, he was like, yeah, I don't know what these things are, but you know, if we can become rich and millionaires, that's the most important thing to me. I want nice cars and nice things. They were a pretty poor family, but you know, that's what he wanted. And she was like, no, these are my babies. These things need me. They depend on me. They trust me. I've built this relationship all these years. I don't want to mess that up. I don't want to betray him. I don't want to mess up that valuable, you know, relationship that I built with them. So there was that dichotomy going on. And, but these people affected him, and he wore the pants in the family, and he was very strong about it. So that really caused a lot of issues with us trying to keep research moving forward. And, I think really negative in such ways that we could have done so much more there than what eventually ended up happening. But I forgot what were you asking initially about this?
Out of there trying to crash your party.
Yeah. So initially, that first year that we were there, there's a guy named Tom Biscardi. I don't know if people have heard of him. He's kind of went into the shadows lately, but he used to be pretty big in the Bigfooting field. He was the guy that came up with all these elaborate plans, and I think he was involved in some weird stuff, maybe hoaxes. I don't want to use that term loosely or anything because I don't know him personally, but he had a big presence in the Bigfooting field. And he had a lot of money and backers, and he had a whole crew of guys that was working with him. Well, he got wind of the location, and he ended up within the first 3 or 4 months of the project making friends with the neighbor that lived 2 houses down from the property location we were working on. And he went back there with his whole crew of guys, 10 guys. They were wearing army boots and, you know, fatigues, and they were all dressed to go to combat with Bigfoot, you know, in the backyard. You know, the typical Bigfoot researchers think they're, you know, going to go to war with these things or something. But
yeah, I wear camo.
Well, no offense to the camo, but these guys literally look like they were dressed, you know, coming right out of the military. And, you know, that's part of the facade. You know, I understand that they got to look like.
I'm just busting. It's all good.
But anyways, they come over and they made friends with her, and they did some live broadcasts and telling about how they're in the backyard and they're going to make all these pancakes, and they're going to get those Bigfoot to come over here to her, and they're going to get all the evidence, and that, you know, they were the ones that were going to bust us loose, and that they shouldn't be working with Adrian. And in fact, that turned out to be later on. They contacted our couple, and tried to get that couple to breach their contracts and secret meetings and to bribe them with a bunch of money and stuff to come work with them instead of working with Adrian, and even saying stuff like, well, contracts are made to be broken. You don't need to, we got lawyers. We'll help cover you. Just ditch those guys and come work with us. And all kinds of nasty stuff going on there. And fortunately, I was able to keep that from happening. I had to do a lot of, a lot of talking and a lot of negotiating and stuff. But what ended up happening is they ended up one day, I was there, and they ended up coming down through some neighbors' property about 2 or 3 houses down and cutting across their property, jumping over fences. Now, this is all private land over there, right? Well, they're going over fences. They're going over people's fences with a whole crew of guys. And I told the husband that morning, I said, yeah, they're driving around with the truck. They were driving up and down the street with a truck. And on the side of the truck, they had this trailer and it said Bigfoot Research with a big graphic on the side of Bigfoot. And it had Tom Biscardi and all this promotional stuff. And he had the whole town, the whole city all up and kind of, everybody was like, just kind of up in, excited about this researcher over there because we had been keeping our stuff on the down low. And so anyways, one morning I was over at his house and we see these guys start crossing the field. We'd seen them go up and down the road several times that morning. And then they parked down at somebody's house and they started crossing private land and they went down, trying to cut down behind their house and their property into the hollow. And anyways, the husband grabbed his rifle and I said, hey, dude, wait, hold on. He was pissed and he went out the back door and raised that rifle towards them and let off a round towards them. And he goes, next one's going to hit you. And I'm like, hey, dude, calm down. We don't need the sheriff out here. Jesus, it's just blowing up. I thought he was going to shoot one of them, right? I mean, the guy had, all I can say is property. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't doubt if he would have, but he shot over their heads and they're over there. They're a couple hundred yards away and they're like, whoa, dude, no, stop, don't shoot. So they ended up going back up the hill, but that's the kind of stuff that was going on. They would get into the property, trespass without asking for permission, trying to get down into the hollows below and set up who knows what, traps, cameras, illegally. And that went on. And then we had, I know this sounds weird, but we had black helicopters flying over the property a lot. Low flying planes. We had cars cruising up and down the road that looked like government cars over that year, the few years. There's a lot of weird stuff going on. And people talk about UFOs associated with this subject. Yeah. I never personally saw one there, but the husband said twice he saw lights right above the trees with no sound, down in the hollow below where they would have often their encounters. And, bright, colorful light like UFOs floating around out there, no sound. And so, stuff happens. So, but
did you ever see like an orb or anything like that? Did you ever witness any of that stuff?
Yeah, I was not a big proponent of any of that because I never really experienced that stuff. I'm trying to stay level. We work with scientists. We don't want to chase anyone off and make people think we're, the woo factor. But man, I can't explain it, but I've saw orbs and lights, and not just there in Kentucky, but in some of our research areas and here in Colorado. And it's not just me, but multiple eyewitnesses too at the same time. So I've seen disembodied lights that shouldn't be in the woods in the dark, almost look like LED lamps or lights, that are there, and then they move in odd ways and then they're gone. And strange stuff.
Yeah, I started off in the Flesh and Blood Club when I first started off, and things have, we'll talk again after the show is over and we'll keep in touch and I'll fill you in on all the stuff that's happened. But like I told you about the coyote leg and all that stuff, things have gotten real weird over the years here. And you got to go where it brings you. You got to bring where the evidence leads you. That, in my opinion, at least, that's where I got to go. So I
Mm-hmm.
never saw an orb until last year up at Snowgrove. We went to Snowgrove Lake in Canada, and we had an orb show go on one night that everybody witnessed it except for Doug didn't get a chance to see one, but he heard the voice that came over we had voices coming over the security cameras and stuff like it was crazy. And this is 500 square miles of nothing, just us and a
Well,
cab and 2 boats.
well, wait, when you say voice, what do you mean?
A
Somebody
voice,
else?
yeah, something came across the security cameras and it sounds like it says, "I'll talk with you." That's what he goes. "I talk with you." And
Oh,
all
so
the
like
orb,
like an
yeah,
EVP or
like
something.
an EVP of some sort,
Oh,
but yeah, we don't know what it was, but it was pretty crazy.
hmm.
Um,
Okay.
so I'm gonna open up the questions here. We're already over the hour mark here, and we got to get Dennis on his way. But I've got a question to ask you. We have a lot of members to the show. Would you be interested in taping the show with me for like an hour when we got free time, and then for the members on the show and tell more about the Erickson project and the stuff that went on there? Would you be
Sure.
interested in that?
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody who's a member to the show or to the network at Untold, I'll let you know when it's available, and then all members will be able to go on in and see extra stuff from Dennis and listen to some more stories what happened down there in Kentucky.
Yeah,
Um,
there was a lot of stuff. I very abbreviated, 5 years. How do you condense that down? But there's a lot of stuff and a lot of fascinating things. I wish I had time to share them all, but there's a lot of really interesting things that occurred there. So
well, before we go, you want to just let us in on like what was like the coolest thing that ever happened to you with there? What was the most exciting interaction that you had?
um, honestly, I think the coolest thing. I mean, I was up in a tree stand with the husband one night. We spent many hours in tree stands and in the dark and in the along the tree lines and in the woods. And we were outfitted with camcorders, night vision, all the things. I often carried audio gear. The one thing that I try to emphasize to researchers out there is Sasquatch tend to be very careful about showing themselves. We all know that. But the one thing they always drop the ball on and they don't put as much consideration is the noise they make. Audio gear is, to me, an essential part of researching. If you have good audio gear, don't skimp on that. Get good audio gear, quality microphones. I use birding quality stuff, but um, you can almost always hear them before you see them. At least in Kentucky, it was a very useful tool. And I'll give an example. We were up in a tree stand one night, and at that time, I only had one camcorder up and going with a night fitted with the PVS 14. And so I gave that to the husband, and he was sitting next to me on this big tree stand we had set up about 15, 20 feet off the ground in this lick of woods that came out of the tobacco field. And we had the wife come out, the woman who'd been doing this. We had her come out with her plate of food. We knew they were in the area because she said she had been hearing them that day and I think the day before. So our intent was to put food out near the edge of the tree line to see if we can capture some more video, even if it was night vision footage, right? So he had the camcorder. I'm sitting to his left, and I've got my audio gear only, and I'm wearing headphones like this with my microphone set down near my knee and listening intently. Now that's a very amplified listening device. Once I got it set up right, I can hear a lot of things really well. And we sat there for 6 or 7 hours. Nothing was happening. It was dark. It was cold. It was quiet. And eventually I was getting kind of tired, but then something caught my attention because I heard what almost sounded like a small animal down in the bush below me. There was a little trail that cut through that finger of woods. And it was very heavily overgrown, but there was a little trail, and I thought it sounded like something was moving through there, but like a small animal, And so I moved the microphone in that direction, and I'm listening, and I could just hear just the subtlest little snap or crack. And so I listened for a little bit, and then kind of went away. So then I pulled it back, and I'm pointing it out towards the ahead of me again, towards the field. And that microphone was so sensitive that after a minute or two, I started hearing footfalls. And this is footfalls on grass. Okay. So there's grass all around there, right? I could hear this distinctive footfalls into the grass. And I glanced over towards Roger. He's looking with the camcorder. He's got it to his eye and he's facing out across the field that way. He can't hear it. He doesn't know. He doesn't have the equipment I have. He's just got the camcorder and he's facing it out that way about 100 yards towards the plate of food. And just as I look towards him, I look down and I see this figure come out from behind that tree line. And it must have been 20, 30 feet from me, direct line of sight down. And it's one of those larger females I described earlier, 6 foot tall. It's one of those two. I could see the distinctive body shape, all dark brown, black colored hair. You know, in the dark, you can't tell. We got a little bit of moonlight, but there was enough moonlight. I could see the entire figure. And she was walking with crossing her legs like a commando stalk, like her crossing her right foot over her left leg and walking with her elbows kind of like this and hunched over. So she's kind of in a sneaking pose and she's coming around that tree line. She did not know we were there, apparently. And now Roger, their husband, looking out across the field over there. And immediately I see her head to toe. I mean, I see the full figure and it's that close to me. And I was so, taken back by just suddenly there it is, again, it's like out of the blue, there's something happening and you never expected it. I instinctively took the back of my hand and I patted his knee next to me twice to get his attention and try to point down that way. Well, just the mere act of just patting his knee, it hurt it. Very good hearing, I guess, but it hurt it. I patted his knee and it stopped and it turned and looked up towards me. And Chris, its reaction was the elbows went up like this. It went, like, somebody that just got what scared out of them? Its elbows go up like this and it made this really loud grunt like, and turned and ran off behind us into the woods. It was over. I saw the whole thing head to toe. And the guy next to me, he didn't see it. It happened so fast. He heard it, but he didn't see it. So it ran off into the woods next to us a little, about 100 yards away. And it got into the tree line over there. And for the next minute or two, it sat over there mad. And it was grunting at us, doing the and I was like, whoa, that was, if only I had that camera in my hand and I was looking down at that spot ready for it coming. But again, so I go back to the details of it. No human being could be moving around that stealthily in that dark. There's a little bit of moonlight, but when you get into those woods, it's really dark. And it's moving around in those woods like a mouse. So it's moving very cautiously and carefully and quietly. No human being. We move through there during the day and we are crashing and snapping and breaking. We make a racket through there. This thing is moving through that thing utterly stealthily and silent. And then when it came around the trees, it's moving in a commando type of very cautious, careful, meditated steps. Incredible. And then you say to yourself, well, no wonder, why they're so hard to get a beat on these things. They're just very highly intelligent and capable of doing what they do. And I think it knew we were out there somewhere. I just don't think it knew we were in the tree stand and it didn't expect us to be there. But she had put that food out there 6 or 7 hours prior, right about before the sun went down. And it waited that long to get to it. That's how cautious and careful it was to approach, that it wouldn't get caught. So that was very, there was many other things that happened. That was one of the most impressionable events that happened while I was out there. I was just blown away by that. So
you were between her and her dinner and she was not happy about it.
Yep. But they continued to take food after that. So, down the road, months and years down the road. So, we would catch them, we would bust them, but they would they would continue to accept those offerings from time to time, but again, very cautiously and carefully, and never from the same directions or the same time. Always broken up, so you're unpredictable. So,
all right. Well, we got time for a couple questions here, guys, and then we're gonna let Dennis get on his way. So, Blue Eyed Northern asks, did you ever hear of any mimicking?
No, one time, if I recall, she had said that, and this is the woman that had been feeding them. I think she had told me once that she was out there, and I said earlier that they grunt and they snap branches and let them know they're there. But I think one time she said that she had thought she had heard someone call her name from the woods, and it wasn't like her husband, but it was kind of like a female voice. But I think she had said she'd heard that once. But gosh, it's 2005 to now. I've got notes everywhere, but I haven't. It's been a while since I've read it, but I'm pretty sure she's heard that once, but very rarely. It must have only happened once that I can recall. So,
been reported, that's for sure. Leigh Warner asked, does she use paper plates or dinner china?
So great question, and I didn't have time to cover this, and I wanted to say that, but paper plates, and the reason we use paper plates is we were gathering saliva samples and DNA samples off those plates, because the one thing we did know is that these things would take fairly regularly. Once every few weeks, they'd take a plate, even though you set it out there and raccoons and cats and dogs would get it. But every once in a while, they would take that plate and they would lick them clean. And she would put syrup or honey or peanut butter on those plates that would stick to the bottom of them. So they'd literally have to lick that plate clean and leave all that saliva on them. And we had processed something, several dozen of those plates over the years. And we did collect hair samples off of them and saliva samples. But in 2005, it was difficult to extract usable DNA from saliva. It breaks down pretty quick. You have to swab cheeks. You have to literally lift cellular sloughed cells from the inside of the mouse to get anything somewhat usable, but even those break down quickly. So eventually, in the end of the project, when we knew we were going to sunset it in about 2010, we had gathered 42 pieces of footage, but the DNA was the critical thing we felt we needed before we were going to close out that project. It became too difficult to continue. We were able to procure a sample of blood from one of those subjects using a plate that had lacerated a tongue or a lip while it was cleaning that plate and left blood. And that was part of, I'm not sure if your viewers might have heard of Melba Ketchum and her DNA project, but we submitted a pretty good sizable samples of blood to that project, which helped, I think, move that along pretty good. And Adrian actually helped fund that. At the time, Melba didn't have the money to process a lot of that DNA, which required a lot of consumable lab equipment. And Adrian was able to come up with the money to help her move that along. And all the other beneficiaries who had submitted samples to her were able to, it helped them as well. But Adrian was a big factor in all of that. And he doesn't seem to get much credit for that. But we did collect the saliva samples. We did collect the blood, but ultimately it was the blood. Hair doesn't yield much unless you can get the bulbs at the end. And if they, even at that, they're fragmented DNA samples, but the blood was really good. And that did really lead to some interesting stuff, but I won't go into that here. I think some people are familiar with that for now. So
nice. Well, I want to say thank you so much. I've learned a lot. I've never, I don't mean to knock it or nothing, but I'm like new to the game and I've only been around for so long and I wasn't familiar with this. And I am now, my eyes are open to a whole new thing. And now I have to go binge everything I can find on it and learn more about it. And now I got your number. So now I'm going to be calling you late night and 3 o'clock in the morning, drunk calls and asking you questions.
You can do that. I may not answer it, but you can call.
No, I'm not going to do that. But I want to say thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for agreeing to do that member only show. That's going to be great. That's a new thing that we're trying here on Untold, and
sounds great.
Yeah, to give members, special privilege. They join up. They pay a little bit, and I mean, so might as well give them something a little extra, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so again, thank you, and everybody in the chat was great tonight, and they're saying great show, and Miss Diane Fowler saying it's been a great show, Chris, great guest, Dennis. So yeah, thank you so much for being part of
Well,
our.
thank you. Yeah, appreciate that myself. Yeah, I don't talk about the subject much. I've kind of done my own thing. We still do research here in Colorado when we can. We're going to be on a New Mexico at Hoyt's property in a few weeks, and I'm looking forward to that. We had an incredible piece of audio I recorded out of there last year, and unfortunately, I was not able to figure out how to upload that sound file to you to play it tonight. I really wish I could have, but
Wait, is that the one you sent me from Hoyt, right?
yeah, I don't know if you got it, but I'm not able to do it on this computer.
I got it. We're going to play it right now before you go. Here we go. You ready?
Yeah, could I explain it real quick before you play it? Do we have time?
We're going to play it after you get done.
Okay, yeah, make it brief. We were on his property, great location. The previous night, there was a lot of elk activity because this is September, and there's a lot of bugling going on. The rut started early, and there was a few cow elk and some calves in the field near us, 100 yards away. The second night, more bugling. This bull was going crazy out there, and I had my audio gear deployed. And I was listening, and often I'll put my headphones on and go to bed listening, 10, 11 at night. And I'm falling asleep to all the night sounds and listening to this bull going crazy and bugling. And after one of the bugles, I captured this scream, which you're going to hear shortly. But it was almost in my mind, the scream is a response to the last bugles. That bull was making everyone mad because everyone was trying to sleep, and that bull just kept bugling and bugling. And I think whatever it was that responded to the bull, I think it was a Squatch, was telling the bull to shut up. But long story short is you'll hear the full clip is I did not edit it from the last bull bugle to the actual scream. And when you first hear it, it's about 38 seconds, I think, between the two. You have to really listen with headphones, but there's a very low, deep grumble and growl before it goes into a man-like scream. Very loud in that area. It echoed off the hills. No one there. Everyone was in their campers, so there was no man that we know about there. We think it was one of the Squatches, but it was really fascinating. And then, funny enough, after that scream, that bull shut up for the next 45 minutes. There was no more bugling or sounds. So interesting. Go ahead, Chris.
All right, let me know if this is the correct recording, because this is the one I downloaded. Okay, just give me a nod.
That's it. Except we didn't get the bull bugle. I left that in there, but that's okay. There it is. Sound.
Is it looping? Is that we already got through it?
It's looping, yeah.
So it's the first initial grunt thing.
So it was originally you heard the bull bugle. I don't know how it looped that way, but the bull bugle was first, and then there was that delay, 38 seconds or so, and then that scream and that howl. And man, that thing echoed throughout that valley. And if you really listen to it with headphones, that low, deep grumble before the scream let out, it sounds animalistic, and then it sounds like a man at the end. So interesting stuff. But when Hoyt heard that, I replayed that for him and his sister the next day, and he said, "Yep, we hear that all the time out here. That's one of the Squatch." I said, "Well,
Very
I believe
cool.
it. So
Very cool. All right. Well, I just want to say thank you. I'm going to put you backstage. Don't go anywhere because I'll talk to you. And as soon as I say goodnight to everybody, and I'll be right back.
Good night, folks.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dennis Pfhol. All right. What a great show that was. I am off next week. I am on call for work. I will be, so I will not be here the following week after. I have Jonathan Brown from Salish Sasquatch on the show. If you're not familiar with them guys, they have a lot going on up in, I believe, Washington State, where they're from, and they have a lot of great videos. So go on and check them out. We have them coming on in 2 weeks. So that's about it. Off next week and then back in 2 weeks. Pay attention to my channel coming up. I'm going to make some videos of what's going on at Rock Throw Alley. I believe we have made contact up there once again, and we are going to start trading up there. I am made the trip to the mountain now in 45 minutes. If I can get it down within a half hour time, I will visit there like I used to when I first started, 3 or 4 times a week if I can. So keep watching. We got stuff going on up there. It's exciting. It reminds me of Larry's when it first started. So that's it. So everybody have a great week. Have a great weekend. Be safe. Stay cool. It's summertime. And as our friend Larry says, get in the woods, people.
Out of bed, still sleeping. Could I be dead? Or is it something I have done? Did I lead you on to think that I was gone? Trapped inside a fake reality. In a while, I get tired of talking. I put on a smile.